Welcome to Range World, the podcast where life, development, leadership, growth, intentionality, and experience come into balance right before your very ears. And now, here's your tour guide into Range World, the president of Get Life in Balance, Rain Kansman.
All right, welcome to another edition of Rain's World. And today my guest is Wade Wickus of Link Supply Chains. And Wade has over 30 plus years of hands-on supply chain experience, providing value to companies looking to create business transformational strategies around cost improvements, culture transformation, thinking differently, which he does that well, optimizing logistics and technology strategies for a more connected business. He's the co-founder of Link Supply Chains, a digital transformation company to help small and mid-sized businesses get onto an e-commerce platform. He is the founder of the podcast Supply Chains, The Secret Sauce to Business, which you should take a listen to. He's got some great pieces on there, which is featured on 6 continents and has over 1,000 downloads. Wade, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, Rain, it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
So in thinking differently, Wade wanted to discuss today what leadership looks like in the future and how to prepare ourselves for that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about how will leadership change in the future and where we've come from and where we're going to go, right? We came from a relationship. I stop at your door, I call on you, to where we are today, where we're emailing and we're still having that relationship kind of. Now with COVID, we've adjusted to the Zoom relationship potential. And what's the future going to look like? You know, the
Right.
customer is changing too, where customers used to come into your store and do business that way. And now they're getting it delivered to the door and they're shopping on the internet. And what's the future going to look like? So all that changes how we're going to lead, in my mind, in the future.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about your mind is you are thinking of all those options and there's no boundaries. So
Right.
Again, as we look at this, where do leaders need to be? Let's look at 5 years from now. Let's take a look. And
Yeah.
where do you think leaders need to be?
Well, look, it's all going to be about not only leading people, but leading the tools and the machines that the people are using.
Okay.
So that's really different. You've got a lot of AI algorithms, you've got virtual reality coming into play, you've got all this technology, and you've got people that are using the technology.
Mm-hmm.
And how you go about inspiring those people to lead their groups in that use of technology and data mining. And there's a lot of singularity to I'm working on this and I'm a part of a bigger team that's working on this bigger project, which is part of a bigger team and a bigger project.
Okay.
So how do you make that work as a leader? And so when I think about that, I think about, there's the social styles and how you interact today on a more personal level, but then there's also the technology that you need to be aware of and how those social styles might differ as you get into the technology side of things. So for me, the leadership will become more of being able to bounce between the use of technology as you lead, like you're going to be able to move away from email and look at these other tools that are going to be available, like the social network that we use today of Facebook, Twitter, etc. Project-based communication. So you have to get in and manage that communication and how that team is working with other teams in a collaborative space. It's going to be more collaborative in the future than it is today. So we've got a lot of silos still in the United States anyway, in terms of businesses, and I think worldwide. And all those silos are going to really change with this dynamic of technology entering into the business space and working collaboratively with less people doing more and using technology to make that happen. So goal setting will be technology based. How you're doing on goals will be technology based. Voice activated communication will become the norm. So
Wow.
how, as a leader, are you going to use that voice activity to manage your day, to
Right.
manage your planning, to manage your team, to send voice messages? But it will be a little bit different in the future of how to do that. So it really takes a different dynamic in terms of a leadership style. You still have to have the strategy, be
Hmm.
able to communicate that strategy, but you also have to work on the customer centric side and the customer experience side, because businesses are heading that way in the future. It's all about how that customer experience differentiates that company from other companies. And the team members working on those atmospheres and those ecosystems
Right.
are all going to be engaged on that process, which is different than today, which is, goal
Right.
setting, hitting your numbers and getting your bonus. The future is going to be more dynamic, 3-year plan, um, customer centric. How do we make customers grow other customers? And how do we facilitate getting product from point A to point B the most efficient way? Using
Wow.
different tools.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps
Yeah.
or answers your question.
Well, there's a lot there. So let me a couple of things it brought up. One is uh, I'm just thinking about the one time I made a leap, and you and I made a similar leap, and went to lead a department that I had not been a part of, and I felt, okay, I'm used to leading a team of people that I grew up. I mean, I grew up in kitchens, and I started as a dishwasher and then a prep cook and then a line cook and then became chef eventually, right? After training in that. And so I'm managing functions that I understood. And when I made that leap into the department that I'd never even been a part of, I felt like a fish out of water until I realized it was about me building trust with my team. They needed to be the experts. I can imagine that a leader of the future, with all those pieces and parts you just talked about, that has to be a real, because to be an expert on all that.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about the manager level. I'm talking about maybe the executive level.
Right.
The versatility. You're going to have different generations, different cultures. You're going to have to get into areas where you don't know all the answers, but you have the right people and asking the right questions. You're going to become more of an ask versus a tell for sure
Yeah.
in the future.
Hmm.
Um, really finding out what's going on, asking the right questions, coaching, all that's going to become more important to your
Yeah.
point in the future. Yeah.
And again, I think that's a successful recipe for today. And I know you've always been that kind of leader. Also, that's a successful recipe for today, and I could see that being more important in the future. So the other thing it brought up for me was I was thinking about the things you were talking about, and some of them, like, for me. Uh, but I am thinking about, I've seen a lot of that stuff in play for fun, through my daughter and her friends, or my son-in-law and his engineering firms and those kind of things. Where does it play into supply chain today? How does some of that stuff, because you're experiencing some of it today, yeah?
Yeah, no, it's very true today. It's a fast-paced market. People are not embracing on technology as I think everybody had hoped, but it's starting to get more and more
Okay.
as we go into it. And the days of email are definitely numbered and going away. But you kind of hit on that. Uh, I want to say intentionality of leadership.
Yeah.
So your day to day has to be more with focus and drive about what you want to try and get accomplished, which is happening today,
Okay.
um, and being more flexible about how you're approaching problems and problem solving, and incorporating teams to solve those problems, and being more people focused, but in a way of productivity and people being together,
Hmm.
versus the past of and maybe some current organizations today look at people in headcount, and do we really need those folks,
Right.
instead of looking at their strengths and I believe reorganizing their teams to find out what can we do with these people to make them productive versus getting rid of them and hiring somebody else
I
you
got you.
know
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's going to be different in the future because there's there's a lot of people that will still do some of the work, but there's not going to be the same amount of people needed.
Yeah.
You know, AI and technology is going to be here,
Right.
and so how do we work with that? How do we manage that? Outsourcing and part time and contract team members are going to be part of the norm. And so, as a leader, how do you inspire those types of positions?
Right. Yeah.
So, finding out how people operate and what inspires them, and how an organization inspires a group by what they're trying to accomplish is super important. And we see that in many ways in the future from today, from Elon Musk and what he's
Hmm.
trying to accomplish in the world. And everybody is so excited to be part of Elon's vision.
Right.
Uh, but at the same time, he's trying to get it done with the least amount of people possible and using the most amount of technology.
Yeah.
So he's a good example of how the curve is being broken.
Okay. Okay. That makes a lot of this stuff makes a lot of sense, Wade. Because as much as we hate to admit it, we know that people are costly. That's a piece. It's not just the individual salary, but benefits and what happens if they're not there, or if, right. And with AI and with some of the technologies and robotics and computers that can fill in those roles, they keep going.
They
Yeah.
do. They do keep
Yeah.
going. But that doesn't mean that there's not opportunities, that there's not a creative way to still be employed, still be valuable,
Right.
and still contribute. But as a leader, you just have this more diverse group of people to lead.
Yeah.
And I think that's things that we need to, like your company, bring into play those type of leadership skills that are going to be more apparent, 5, 10 years from now,
Right.
of how to lead a multicultural, very diverse, multi-pay scale
Right.
type of team with contract and non-contract and outsourced and non-outsourced staff. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of tools that you can use for that. But the keys from a leadership standpoint are your versatility and communication, really
Okay.
understanding what inspires people
Hmm.
and how to maintain that inspiration. And then number three, if you do have to look at productivity, do it in a way that really plays to people's strengths and move people around.
Uh-huh. So here's the other thing that's coming to my mind. Expectations for the same leader and the output of their team is far greater today than it used to be. And that's some of the push for this new methodology and new ways of doing things. Um, so how would somebody start down that road, Wade? What I mean, we have a lot of young leaders coming up that are maybe built for this from a certain standpoint. But what are some of the things that if you had to give them, other than spending an afternoon with Wade, which he'd love that because he loves sharing ideas. What's another way that a young leader could learn, or where should they start? Which way should they start down
Yeah.
that path?
Well, and that's a great question. Mentorship is going to be even more important in the future, because you do want to learn from those leaders that have been successful in the
Mhm.
past,
Yeah.
and then add some creativity of leaders in the present day, and are leaders that are at the cutting edge, and really understand how to develop your own leadership style based on that. There's going to be a lot of great books coming out in the near future about leadership, but really putting value in yourself to continue your education in your leadership. A lot of folks just stay at their job at work, and
Right.
they're inspired by their leader in that position, but reach out. There's a whole bunch of people out there that really can help you, and some great coaches, like yourself, but other avenues to
Mhm.
really continue to grow. So I would say continue your growth, and don't lose sight of what you want to change in yourself,
Right.
and to become more open about what you need to change in yourself. And three, I would say, look at where you are in your space and how your space is going to change, and start to develop those changes and using different tools to be more successful in your time management so that you can reach more people and drive more results.
I like that. I like that. Wow. So you did, we've talked about a couple different ways, and you talked about resources like books. Are there other resources out there, coaches you talked about, but are there other resources that you've found that are very valuable for you?
Other resources I would say is one, making a personal mission plan for
Mhm.
yourself. Really understanding yourself is step number one.
Okay.
What do you want to do? What are you good at? What do you need to work on?
Uh-huh.
Right? So once you understand those three, then you can start moving on to technology, how I can better look at my time management.
Hmm.
Are there ways I can do things more efficiently? Is taking notes the right way for me? Or should I be typing on a computer? Or should I be um, listening to these messages and recording them as I'm sitting in meetings? Or, what is the right approach that's different for you?
Mm.
And then how do you manage your team? Are you using Mondays or a bunch of the other different software that's out there to track how teams are working on projects and the team communication and getting rid of the noise that's out there, getting rid of the emails that don't make any sense, that don't need to be in anybody's email box, and migrating your teams towards more of that what's necessary to know for uh, managing your team to reach their goals and reach their inspirational objective. Yeah, those are some of the things that I work on, and how you do that is working on yourself,
Hmm.
getting people, mentors to work with you, and just being observant of tools and how to use them, and continuing to educate yourself and think differently about, well, hey, I could use this for that, or getting diverse information from people around you to ask more questions. What do you think about this? How do you think I could do
Yeah.
better?
So I do have to tell you, Wade, as I try and land the plane on this conversation, because every time I get in a conversation with you, my mind expands, and sometimes it hurts, and it does always allows or always inspires me to go look up some of the things that you just talked about. So thank you very much, my friend. You're always enlightening, and I appreciate our conversations. Anything you want to
Okay.
leave the listeners with?
No, really. Thank you for your time, Rain. I appreciate it. The leaders of the future are going to be dynamic, amazing, and full of technology.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
This has been another leadership lesson from Rain's World. If this kind of learning whets your appetite, leaving you wanting for another helping of this kind of content, visit me at getlifeandbalance.com.